Sony FX5 versus Panasonic S1 II. These are both the latest and greatest full-frame filmmaking cameras from both companies. And in this video, I'm putting them head-to-head, comparing all their features and telling you which one wins and which one you should buy. Side note, I'm using an FX30 here because I had to return the FX5 that was on loan to me from Sony, but everything I talk about here is from my hands-on experience with the FX5. Also, this video is sponsored by Artlist. Now, the biggest thing that most people are talking about other than the price, which I promise we're going to get to, is the fact that both the FX5 and S1 II can record raw video internally. But this is also where they diverge significantly, because while the FX5 records to Sony's in-house developed X-OCN RAW format, the S1 II, on the other hand, records in the third-party Apple-developed ProRes RAW format, and there's a big difference between them. X-OCN on the FX5 records in 16-bit with 280 trillion colors and multiple compression options that are small enough to fit onto an SD card, really making RAW feasible to easily film with this camera, which is really exciting. On the other hand, the S1 II's ProRes RAW lets you choose between standard and HQ levels. And I have to say, even the standard file sizes are quite massive. 2.8 gigabits per second for standard, 4.2 gigabits per second for RAW, which means you're gonna need quite large memory cards, which is also why I don't see many filmmakers using ProRes RAW when filming. It's not usually worth the quality versus the file size, but you can tell me if you disagree in the comments. So in the area of raw video recording, I'm gonna have to give the edge to Sony with the FX5. But if you're worried that this is a Sony fanboy video, hold up, because not only am I filming this video on a Panasonic S1 II right now, it's about to get a lot, and I mean a lot of wins. Starting with that argument that I just made about how you're gonna need a lot of large memory cards to use the S1 II, well, that was actually a lie, because the S1 II, as well as all of their Panasonic cameras for many years now, let you skip using memory cards and connect an external SSD to the camera via the USB Type-C port, which can save you a ton of money if you already own a big SSD. This is a fantastic feature, and I'm honestly still upset that Sony has not included it with their cameras. Heck, the FX5 has dual USB-C ports, Sony. One of those could connect to an SSD. Come on. So Panasonic easily wins this by default with this feature, and let's move on to the resolutions and frame rates that these cameras support. For context, the S1 II uses a partially stacked full-frame sensor capable of recording in 6K resolution at up to 60 frames per second, while the FX5 has a fully stacked full-frame sensor capable of recording in up to 5K resolution at 60 frames per second. This means that the S1 II wins from a pure resolution standpoint. But in my opinion, if you are delivering your videos in 4K, which most filmmakers still do these days, both 4K and 5K give you a ton of room to reframe your video in post, and in some situations you may actually want the smaller resolution 5K file to keep file sizes smaller. Again, you can debate which side you fall on down in the comments. Anyways, we ain't done with resolution and frame rates yet, because both these cameras can also record in 4K at up to 120 frames per second, which is great. Where these cameras start to diverge significantly more, though, is that Sony says that they're adding 4K recording in 240 frames per second in RAW in a firmware update in 2027. And I believe, from what Philip Bloom said, it's going to have a 1.3x crop, which is not bad for 4K 240. We'll see if there's any other limitations, but this is quite exciting, and I think that Sony wins in the future 240 FPS category, which you didn't even know that was a category, but guess what it is. Anyways, if you thought we were done with resolution, sorry, we're almost there, but we got to talk about Open Gate, which is a feature that filmmakers literally begged Sony for many years for, and Panasonic filmmakers, on the other hand, have been enjoying for literally almost a decade. I think it came out in the GH5 in 2017. So yes, it is sad. Regardless, the FX5 is the first Sony camera that isn't a Venice or Burano capable of filming in Open Gate, and it can do it in the 3:2 aspect ratio in 5K at up to 60 frames per second in RAW, which is fantastic, and it also supports anamorphic D-squeeze options from 1.3 to 2.0, which is solid too. Unfortunately though, that's all the FX5 can do when it comes to Open Gate, and the S1 II sorely beats it in the Open Gate realm. With the S1 II, you can not only film in 6K 3:2 at up to 30 frames per second, it also supports 5.1K at up to 60 frames per second, plus a greater variety of resolutions and aspect ratios like 4:3 and 235:1 CinemaScope. Then we get to the more important differentiation in my opinion. The S1 II doesn't require you to film in RAW like the FX5 does to record in OpenGate. You can choose compressed formats, which makes the file sizes much more manageable, and I really appreciate that. In addition, and here's another wrinkle, the FX5 also loses its ability to autofocus when using anamorphic D-squeeze, which is a very weird limitation, but from what I've researched, it only loses that when using the D-squeeze internally, so if you use an external monitor, you can still get around and have autofocus. It's just a very strange limitation. So the S1 II wins in its total 6K sensor resolution, as well in OpenGate, but it also wins in another very important area, and that is in how the camera presents to you all the resolutions, frame rates, and aspect ratios it supports, which is really important to the usability of really any camera. With the FX5, you open the menu and can change the resolution, frame rate, and format, but it's confusing because the camera will switch from recording in RAW to non-RAW and not tell you unless you check the menu. In addition, the camera will also restart often. Anytime you switch from RAW to non-RAW or from 24 FPS to recording in 30 FPS or higher, it will restart, and it's very strange and annoying. With the S1 II, on the other hand, first of all, it doesn't have to restart. And in addition, Panasonic knew that having over 100 different combinations of formats and frame rates and resolutions would be very confusing to filmmakers. I'm scrolling through, there's 19 pages of formats here. It's crazy. So Panasonic gives you a very helpful sorting solution of the camera. You simply go down here to display filtering, and then you say, hey, for frame rates, I only want to view the frame rates that are 60 frames per second. And then it will show you all of the resolutions and aspect ratios that can record at 60 FPS. Or you can drill it down even further and say, actually, and only for 42010L. Great, now we're down to just 10 results. Do you see what I'm saying? You simply pick the resolution, codec, frame rate that you want, and then the camera will show you the supported options, which makes changing settings dramatically easier and much more intuitive than Sony does. The S1 II easily wins in the menu usability department, at least when it comes to choosing frame rates and resolutions, not to mention that it also wins in changing those frame rates and resolutions because it doesn't require you to stop what you're doing and wait 10 seconds for the camera to restart like you have to do with the FX5. And it's at this point that I would really love to give Sony a win, as the S1 II is curb stomping it into the ground right now. But if we're talking about features that truly matter when comparing these cameras, here's one of the biggest. And it's really a differentiating factor of what these two cameras are, and in my opinion, the markets that they are trying to hit. Look at the S1 II. This would be considered by most people to be a hybrid camera, capable of fantastic filmmaking, but it's still in a photo camera mirrorless form factor and can still take raw photos. It is quite a capable photography camera, and I have used mine for paid photo shoots. But then you have the FX5, and Sony is positioning this more as a cinema camera. And what I mean by that is that while it shares an extremely similar body to the FX3, a camera that took the menus from Sony's photography-focused Alpha line and could still take raw photos even though it didn't have an EVF, the FX5, on the other hand, takes its menus from the Sony Venice and Burano cameras. And just like how the Venice and Burano are incapable of taking raw photos, the FX5 is not capable either. Some people are very upset about this, understandably. But do you see filmmakers complaining about not being able to use the Venice to take photos? No. That would be ridiculous. I think the issue is more so that the FX3 could take raw photos, so it feels like Sony is taking things away from us. Not to mention the design really does feel like a photo camera in some ways still, and most importantly, why can't Sony just give us the ability to take raw photos? It should be possible, and it feels like a weird arbitrary limitation of the menus and design of their cinema line that they shoved into the FX5. So yes, the S1 II easily wins in the area of raw photography by default because it's a hybrid camera that's actually capable of taking raw photos, unlike the FX5. Told you, it's a curb stomping here by the S1 II. Now, going back to the design of the FX5, another weird choice that I think is upsetting people that want to take photos with this camera is that it actually is capable of using a detachable EVF. So the FX3 has no EVF but raw photos, and the FX5 has an EVF but no raw photos? Matt confused. Why use a lot of words when few words do trick? And then you have the S1 II, which has a normal built-in EVF, which works great, just like you would expect it to, but I do think it'd be cool if they offered an S1 II body with a detachable EVF. They could just make it smaller, chop off the top, maybe add some mounting screws, basically just make an FX5 body, Panasonic, but with your tech inside it. That'd be really cool. S1H2 maybe? Come on, come on. There's your ideas for you. Anyways, let's say the EVF department is a tie because both the FX5 and S1 II have EVFs. Find in the comments about it because I got to move on. Where else do these cameras tie? The screen. Kind of. They tie in that both of them are fully articulating, which is fantastic. I love that you can flip it out, you can rotate it and tilt it at different angles. It is wonderful. Sony does get a win here though, and they desperately need one at this point because the screen is larger and nicer on the FX5. Wow, this thing is good. All cameras need bigger screens. Nikon still wins with the ZR 4-inch screen, but the FX5 is in a close second. Wow, it's stellar, and once you go big, you're not gonna wanna go back. Even the S1 II screen, like, it's just so tiny now, dang it. Back to ties though. Both the S1 II and FX5 are capable of recording 32-bit float audio, but sadly, both of them also require you to use an XLR handle that you have to purchase separately for $530 for the S1 II and $800 for the FX5, but you can bundle your FX5 purchase with the handle for only $600 extra at the time of recording this video. The FX5 is more expensive on its own, but it does get a slight edge due to the handle being far more robust than the S1 II. I would not recommend picking up the S1 II by the XLR adapter. They don't call it a handle, they call it an adapter, okay? And there's a reason for that because it's a little fragile. But regardless, honestly, both of these cameras lose to the ZR, which can record any signal into the 3.5mm mic jack in 32-bit float. Great job, Nikon. You didn't know you'd be winning in this S1 II versus FX5 video, but you're winning on the screen and you're winning on the 3.5mm mic jack. Now, before we talk more about the differences between these cameras, I want to pull back the curtain a bit and show you how I brainstormed creating the thumbnail for this YouTube video. And I did it by using the sponsor of this video, Artlist, and their new Claude MCP integration. I've been using Claude for quite a while now to help organize my ideas for YouTube videos, but Claude isn't exactly known for being great at image generation. So when it comes time for me to conceptualize ideas for thumbnails to use in my YouTube videos, this is where Artlist MCP integration with Claude is extremely useful. Now, if you don't know what an MCP integration is, it's basically a way for AIs like ChatGPT and Claude to fully integrate with Artlist, which gives you all of the AI Artlist tools that you use inside of the conversational interface with Claude. So whenever I was brainstorming thumbnail ideas and I wasn't sure exactly which direction I wanted to go, all I had to do was open up a new chat in Claude, and I tell it I'm working on a video comparing the Panasonic S1 II to the Sony FX5, and I wanted to use the Artlist connection to generate 5 thumbnail concepts with Nano Banana 2, and then I hit enter. What's great is that AI is actually better at generating prompts than humans are. So the AI connects to Artlist, wrote the entire prompt, and gave me multiple thumbnails in a few seconds, all in the chat. No need to even open a web browser. This is so quick, and it's really helpful if you're trying to come up with concepts and ideas for video thumbnails and you aren't sure which direction to go. I'll link to Artlist down in the video description for you to check out this new MCP connection, and whenever you use that link, you can get 2 extra months free added to your subscription, so go check it out right now. Now, let's give Sony some more wins. Sorry, Panasonic fans, but these are kind of undeniable, but there is nuance too, don't worry, so you can still argue with me about it if you want to. First, we got low light. The FX3 was considered the low light king for many years with its base ISOs of 800 and 12,800, but I have to say the S1 II with base ISOs of 800 and 5,000 is still really extremely good in low light, and you can push it far above 5,000. Crank it up to 25,600 if you want to. It does have noise at higher ISOs, but it's a lot less mushy due to less noise reduction than the FX3, which a lot of filmmakers preferred having the less mushiness of the S1 II over the FX3 at those higher ISOs. That said though, the FX5 does beat the S1 II in low light in 3 areas. First, you have the higher base ISO of 12,800, which is over double 5,000, so obvious win there. Next, the FX5 is Sony's first triple base ISO camera with a third ISO added between 800 and 12,800 at 4,000, which is quite close to the 5,000 on the S1 II. Lastly, and here's the big clincher for the FX5, unlike the S1 II, you can adjust the level of noise suppression in the camera or even turn it off completely, which can give the FX5 a sharper image at high ISOs, and overall, extra controls like this is a really good thing that filmmakers will appreciate. Next for Sony wins, we have to talk about overheating. Panasonic cameras have built a reputation over many years for basically being impossible to overheat, but that all changed with the launch of the S1R2 and S1 II, as filmmakers discovered soon after the launch that both of those cameras could overheat in as short as 8 minutes recording outdoors on a hot day. Yeah, when I tested the S1 II, I found that I got 33 minutes before it overheated, which was a concern considering that the camera does have a fan. Thankfully, Panasonic heard filmmakers' feedback and released a firmware update that greatly improved the overheating performance of the S1 II and S1R2 by up to 2 to 4 times, which is great, but whenever you compare to the FX5, this is where things get interesting, because when I tested the FX5, I have a full overheating test video of the camera, by the way, that will be linked in the description. The FX5 passed with flying colors, not showing a sign of overheating when recording, even when recording in 5K at 60 FPS, raw, outdoors on a hot and sunny day. It literally ran till the battery ran out, no overheating. It was extremely impressive, and so I can't help but feel that while the S1 II has made great strides to improve, and I doubt that you're gonna deal with overheating at 24 FPS with this camera. If you're recording a lot at 60 FPS, you may still deal with overheating. So it's a matter of the S1 II possibly overheating versus the FX5 never overheating, which matters a lot to wedding filmmakers and other people that have to record outdoors for a long time, like at a wedding ceremony. The FX5 wins in the area of overheating. Next for wins for Sony, don't worry, Panasonic has more wins coming, I promise. I'm trying to keep both sides happy here. We gotta talk about timecode. And this is a feature that is a bit more of a personal preference, but let me explain. Both the S1 II and FX5 support timecode, which is fantastic, but they will differ wildly in how they implement it. Sony makes it really simple. You buy a USB-C to timecode adapter cable, pop open the side of the camera, plug it into the port, and then connect the other end to any timecode device. Deity, Tentacle Sync, Ceramonic, Atomos, you name it, it works, and it's fantastic. Everything syncs up. Alternatively though, Panasonic chose to go with something that looks better on paper. They went with a Bluetooth wireless timecode feature, so no USB-C adapter cable required. Great, right? But here's the big but. This wireless Bluetooth timecode is proprietary to Atomos and their UltraSync Blue devices, which are flimsier than the competition. These devices don't have an iPhone app, they're more expensive, I could go on. But in short, the Atomos timecode system is arguably the worst out of all of your options, and you're essentially locked into it when using the S1 II, which really kind of sucks. Panasonic lets you record via USB-C to an SSD. Let us use timecode via USB-C too. Come on, please. You can argue with me about this if you like Atomos timecode in the comments. Heck, I even have a full Atomos timecode tutorial that I've made on YouTube, but I have to say, it's still not as good as the competition from Sony. Anyways, let's give Panasonic a win, and it's clearly an obvious one that they've enjoyed for many years. IBIS with Panasonic cameras has been great all the way back to the GH5, and the S1 II doesn't change that. Sony's FX5 is better than the FX3 in that it has their newer dynamic active stabilization mode, but the S1 II still wins in sheer brute force IBIS usability when it's handheld. It's stellar. Sony's still good, I would say, but Panasonic keeps on winning and making our footage look stable. Our being all filmmakers, yeah, if you use it, you're like, wow, this is super stable. Pretty great. So just like how I gave the edge to Panasonic on IBIS though, I'm also going to give the edge to Sony when it comes to autofocus performance. Panasonic was always playing catch up to Sony for years with this gross contrast based autofocus, and Sony keeps on making improvements with AI subject detection that works extremely well, but I will give credit where it's due. The S1 II was a massive, and I mean massive, leap in autofocus capability, and I would put the S1 II very close to the FX5 in autofocus performance. For context, I'm filming this right now with the S1R2, and the S1 II has been my go-to YouTube camera for my talking head for many years now. The autofocus is very fast and reliable and accurate, and the only area where I find Sony winning is in edge cases, like where a person isn't fully facing the camera or only part of their body is visible, which the FX5 can just keep holding focus, and the S1 II may start to wonder. It's close, to be clear, closer than it has ever been, but Sony still pulls ahead. Next, we gotta go back to talking about the sensor for a second because you thought we were done. No, we're just breaking things up so you guys don't glaze over. We gotta touch on sensor stuff because there's another feature that Panasonic pioneered, but Sony is pushing ahead of them just slightly, and that is in the area of dynamic range. For context, the sensor in the S1 II is one of the best in any camera today, and whenever reviewers like Gerald Undone tested the dynamic range, it showed that it was hitting about 13.4 stops, much higher than something like the FX3's 12.5 stops. But then you have the FX5, which show it capable of hitting 13.9, basically 14 stops of dynamic range, which is even more impressive. More importantly too, both the S1 II and FX5 use a feature called dual gain, or the Panasonic calls it dynamic range boost, where the camera will essentially record a brighter and darker image together and combine them to give the camera much better highlight and shadow detail. With the S1 II, this dual gain feature is limited to certain frame rates, namely it only works up to 30 frames per second, so if you want to record in 60 or 120, you don't get the extra dynamic range. But the FX5, that also keeps the dynamic range, but it works up to 60 frames per second, which I know a lot of filmmakers will appreciate. So not only does the FX5 have an edge in dynamic range, it can also achieve this extra dynamic range in more frame rates, which is great. And this all brings us to the big enchilada. The biggest difference between the FX5 and S1 II is going to be the deciding factor for many filmmakers who are considering buying one of these cameras, and that is, of course, the price. See, I promised you we'd talk about it, and we finally got there at the time of recording this video. The FX5 is coming in at $5,900 plus an extra $800 if you want the XLR handle, or you can get a combo for $5,500 that gives them both as a bundle, or alternatively, you have the S1 II coming in at a significantly cheaper $2,900 plus $530 for their XLR adapter. This extra $2,100 for the FX5 is clearly a lot of money, getting close to double the cost for the Sony. And whenever you look at all the specs we talked about, yes, Sony gets the edge in a decent amount of areas over the S1 II, but very few of them are a slam dunk. And the S1 II clearly has slam dunks, like the freaking ability for it to take raw photos or record raw over USB-C, which the FX5 cannot do at all. Or let's look at things another way. The S1 II gives you 90%, let's say, of what the FX5 can do, but for way less money. There's a reason that I've been using the S1 II as my A-roll camera for YouTube for over a year now. It is such a great value with a ridiculous amount of features. So here's what I would do if I was in your position of buying one of these cameras. First, do you want to film in RAW with file sizes that are actually small enough to be usable without completely filling up all your memory cards and hard drives, and you want all that raw color control? Do you want uncompromising low light performance, stellar timecode support, zero chance of overheating, and the future hope of 4K at 240 frames per second? Then get the FX5. It is unquestionably better than the S1 II in those areas, and many of them are why I have it pre-ordered, because it is worth the cost premium to me. But do you want to occasionally take photos? Do you want dynamic range that is better than basically any camera other than the FX5? Do you want the most open gate choices? Do you want more resolution, better IBIS, low light that's still extremely good, USB-C recording to an SSD, and you're okay with risking the camera overheating if you're recording outdoors for a long time on a hot day? Oh, and you want to save over $2,000? Get the S1 II. It's a stellar camera. I absolutely love mine. And if you still aren't sure, I'll link to both my reviews for each of these cameras in the description for you to watch. These go even more in depth, and while you're in the description, I'll also link to my FX5 video playlist, which is growing a lot and has a lot more videos for you to watch about that camera. One of those videos is my Sony FX5 memory cards guide that's going to show you the best cards to buy to record in different formats with the camera. And when I made that video, I did a lot of research to create an FX5 memory cards cheat sheet, which is going to show you literally all of the camera's resolutions and frame rates and which kind of memory card you should buy to record with it. It's going to be extremely helpful to you, and you can download this guide at the link in the video description completely for free. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.